Next is very easy topic, and I think it should be over quickly, because the title is Future of Journalism. Welcome, please welcome Dr. Johan Lindén and the moderator Fernando, Ojea from CIRCOM and TVG, Spain.
Bon dia, good morning. I'm going to start this session on Facebook mode. I have 2 seconds to say something very interesting for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to find out what's the future of journalism. Seriously speaking, I'm going to present you our research has been held by a group of media and public service media and commercial media that went together in Sweden, and they make a little difference of the rest of the sessions we have been presenting yesterday and today, because we have been listening experiences in one single media, the way we have just heard of from Al Jazeera and every other. And now we are going to present the joint research for a group that's trying to be in touch with the biggest platforms on internet, and they're going to track some thousands of people to know their habits in order to find what are their behavior towards internet, towards online. So I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Johan Lindén, who is the project manager of this group called The Future of Journalism. He has been working for decades in the management of media, and he's also been the Secretary General of CIRCOMRegional. Johan, please.
And thank you, Jazeera, for that warm-up act. It's like the band that followed the Beatles must have felt after his fantastic speech. Funny thing is that we are covering basically the same thing, but me from a European and Scandinavian perspective. So I think that Jazeera is coming back, so we can take some joint questions afterward, because I think that there are many questions still in the room. I'm going to talk about the future of journalism, which is a Swedish project, and it's kind of a unique, sweet beast. It is basically 100% of the Swedish market that have joined forces. So we have the Bonnier Media Group, which is a big private family group, the Schibsted Group, which is the biggest Norwegian media company, but they also operate largely in Sweden. The NTM Group, which is the regional newspaper and media group, and the public service broadcasting, the different companies. We have joined forces to secure quality journalism. And whenever we meet, it is like there is death hanging in the room. So that is why we actually have started this project. It's been on for 2 years. And when I left CIRCOM as the Secretary General, I was asked to be the project manager for that project. I have a board and with the CEOs of these companies and the head of publishing. So it's the top publishers in Sweden that meet 4 to 6 times a year, half days with me, and they are the kind of the strategy group that sets out the strategy of the project that will continue as long as necessary. And that is an important thing. The companies are financing it, but the Swedish Innovation Authority is also financing it because they think it's such strategic importance for the Swedish democracy that quality journalism is surviving. And I work on a regular basis with startup companies that do AI and big data analysis, and I work also on a daily basis with Google, which is kind of a schizophrenic relation, because I also argue with Google on a regular basis. But this is the project, and I'm going to go through some of our findings, because we do also a lot of research. I'm working with the Stockholm School of Economics, 6 researchers there, and other academia in the whole world, actually, in order to actually find the expertise on each question and challenge we have found. This is the vision that all these companies have agreed on, and it is basically to secure quality journalism in a global market. And why should you listen to us in Scandinavia? This is a kind of a complicated map made by Tufts University, and it's trying to tell you the state of digitalization in the world, and which countries that are going up, going down, and the variables they're working with are broadband penetration, household broadband, and so forth. A lot of different criteria. And you can see that Sweden, this is 2008 to 2013, those years, you can see that Sweden is on top, and Singapore. Why is this important? It's not because we are very good. It is because the users are living a completely different life than the users in, for instance, Poland or Slovenia. They are much more digital. Their behavior is much more digital. And also, this is one of the reasons why the big American platforms are so heavily investing in Scandinavia. Because these are fairly new figures from March. The DESI report from the EU Commission ranks Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and the Netherlands as the most digitalized countries in Europe. So my point is that if you're not living in these countries and working in these countries, learn from us our mistakes. Because what we really need to do is fail faster. We cannot afford failing so slow as we have been doing the last 15 years. We have missed too many trains. So our mission in the project is to be very transparent, to share all the information we got in Sweden to other media outlets, but also to you, to everyone in Europe. So this will go on, we will publish our reports, and they will be available for you. It is the defining moment for public service media and for most of the quality journalism. And we have identified, like Nazir, challenges, 10 challenges, and these are the challenges. Pretty much the same, if you think about it, but big data is super important. As a journalist, you need to understand what a pixel is, you need to understand the fundamentals of AI and machine learning, you need to know what this is all about. And you also need to know what happens with personal integrity. The viral behavior is really important for us. This is new. The fastness, the speed of the viral behavior, we need to understand this. Premium news, what is that? What is quality news? Because it doesn't really matter what we think is quality, it is what the audience think, the users. The power of the individual, that means the loss of power, our power. How can we deal with that? The engagement, I don't know how it is in your countries, but 6-7 years ago, almost all media outlets had commentary fields next to their journalism. They don't anymore in Sweden because they couldn't handle it, because they were trolling, there were trolls using the commentary fields, there were political campaigns using the commentary fields, so they are gone, almost gone totally. There's some in the social media, but it's too hard to control and manage this. But at the same time, the people are much more, the audience, the users are much more engaged in content sharing, and they're much more engaged in society. But media has kind of dropped that ball, and we need to get back on that. we talked yesterday, our Finnish colleague talked about individualization. How do we do that? Don't we need segments anymore? Is it even possible to work towards every individual in the target groups? New formats, been a lot of new formats here. And local players on global markets. What is that? When I talk to Google, they consider Sweden a local market. How can Swedish journalism survive at all? And then news on the run, the impact of the mobile. I'm going to go further in depth in the new media ecosystem. And these are some of the questions that we are working with right now. The role of original content versus the technology platforms. Are they stealing, borrowing, using us, and so forth? The social dimension, how can we work with that? We have always claimed to be interacting with society, but how can we actually work with the social dimension and the new possibilities? And again, global market. Big data and personal integrity. I'm going to talk a bit about that, how we can approach this question. And this is a much more important question than I think most people understand, because for public service media, it's all about before or after a login. Because if you have a login on your site, you can actually track the individuals. If you don't have that, you're just broadcasting as you have been doing all the time. So this is a very strategic question. But if we have a login, should we track the audience? Should we know that this is a 14-year-old person and everything we can actually know? Should we behave like Facebook? Are people prepared? Do they actually expect us to do that? We don't know. Right now we know. I'm going to show you. The converged audience. We have been talking for many years about what happens to us when all media floats together and converges. But we haven't talked much about the audience. We, as journalists, we are super self-focused all the time. We're all narcissists. We kind of forget the audience all the time. I think that most of the sessions here are that we talk about the audience, but it kind of always, what happens to us? How should we do? What happens to my job? So we need to understand the audience much, much better. So we did our first study. We had 38,000 Swedes in this study. They agreed to have a little software installed in all their browsers, on all their devices. And all the companies involved agreed that we install the software in their sites and on their applications. Not all, but some applications. So we could track every single movement, digital movement, from the digital news consumers. This is unique, hasn't happened before. Google can do this on Google search and YouTube. Facebook can do it, but we did it ourselves in the media ecosystem, the Swedish media ecosystem. And then, since when you were on the computer consuming Swedish television or Dagens Nyheter, we saw that, and we could shoot out questions immediately when the person was doing something. So we could ask, why are you doing this? What do you think now? So that was a completely new kind of survey. This is big data. We have 40 million data points that we are now working with machine learning to understand. So we use everything we know about the news consumption, and we go over the whole internet, scraping the whole internet to understand more. What was out there? Why did they choose this? And so forth. Completely new way of audience research. I'm going to share this with you, some of the results. This is a new segmentation from the Swedish digital market. It's only digital. And it's completely different from what we have used in newspapers, television, and radio. They're new segments. We call one the enthusiasts, another the traditionalists, the dutiful. You know the people that reads the news because they think they have to be a good human being and so forth. And then we have the follower, the social, and the skeptical. You also see the percentage of the population, how big these are. I'm going to go further into them. The blue ones, I would like to skip. You can have this slide eventually if you want to go through it. But what is interesting with the blue ones is that they are surprisingly young. Most of you think that you have an old audience, not in digital. Because it is fairly young people that consume heavily our news. So digital is working in all age groups. But the blue ones are kind of, if I make it really easy, they like us. They understand us. They consume us. They have done it and will do it. Not much of a problem. But the orange ones, huge problem. Come back to that. What is interesting is that the social, which implies that they are really using media for social events, they are sharing a lot, and the hypothesis was that these are mainly women, not true, more men. They're very young, not true, fairly old, so to speak, but they are much more younger than in the blue fields. They are from smaller cities. So there's a clear correlation. If you're from a small city, this is what you do. You communicate with people all over the world. The follower loves news, a bit more women, but they are from large cities. And the skeptical. I don't know how it is in your country, but in Sweden, we talk about the Trump voter, the person that is skeptical towards authority in general. And that implies a lot of things. It's usually an angry young man without a job, kind of the image you get. This is not true. It's much more complex. There are a lot of people that are skeptical towards legacy media. A fairly high proportion of high-educated people living in university cities, they are not skeptical because they think that media in general, they don't trust media in general. They are skeptical very, very clearly because they think we are doing a bad job, because they can compare with the whole, all the media out there, and they can compare it with the sources themselves, because these are the people that go to the sources. They don't like us because we're really bad at giving out our sources and helping them to go further into the news. If we look at what's differentiating them, we can see that in the orange fields, we can see that there's high news commitment with the followers. They are really inspired by news and the followers, and they are on the mobile. That's how they get their news. The social, they are sharing a lot. And you can see that the skeptical are also sharing a lot. When we ask them, why do you share? And this is a bit funny. The social say, to show people who I am. Self-branding is actually used as describing themselves. A lot of food and things like that. But also news. The skeptical is to convince other people that I'm right. So they have different kind of triggers for sharing. Is that important to us? Do we differentiate in our product to these people? And they value facts and accuracy, the skeptical. That's why they don't like us, because we are bad, they think, in showing facts. And of course, there is a proportion here that think that we show the wrong facts, because they believe in other facts, and we have a slightly different interpretation of facts, but it's not a lot. These are well thought through. But they distrust legacy media, but of other reasons. Also here in the social and the skeptical, high percentage linked in from Facebook. During this time, we realized that all media had almost 70%, between 50 to 70% of the digital consumption came through Facebook. Facebook is not sharing any data, as we heard, on individual level or any segmentation. You just get what is good for them to get more into depth in bed with them. And we also looked at the news needs. Why do you consume news? And we thought that maybe that would be different. But we also saw here that stay updated if you're on digital is by far why you're there. It is actually useless to do a nice video reportage for this, even if it's on a big computer screen. They don't want that. It's for getting updated. And they want news that you can use. Second, experience. Third, form an opinion. The fourth. And you can see it's basically the same size of the bubbles. So if you're digital and don't update a lot, you're doing the wrong thing. And we also saw 6 different patterns of consumption, totally different. And you can see the percentage in the head. What we called the complete update, that would be me, probably, very few, 4%. And they use devices, the computer, they spend a lot of time. They use a long time per page, they have multiple sites, they check all the sites, and they have kind of a regular pattern. And then we have the update sites, 36%, by far the biggest, really short. I can see at least 4 right now that are updated. And then we have the first page visit, very short, you go to the same page all the time. In Sweden, it happens to be the same page, Aftonbladet, for most people, even if you're working somewhere else, which we also can see, that there are a lot of illoyal people. And then we have the specific content consumption. Usually, they come from mobiles, always via Google. Google has, as we heard, a 90% monopoly on search. Less in the US, much higher in Europe. In Sweden, it's total. You don't find people that know what DuckDuckGo is in Sweden, even if you have it in your iPhone. In-depth is also through Google. They come directly from Google to the news. They don't even know that they're coming to a specific brand, because Google is throwing them to a brand. So it's in the hand of Google where they go. And from social media, it's Facebook, and it is computer. The problem here that we have in this whole research is that we didn't get in the phones, because neither Apple or Android would let us. So we have tried for a year to get into the phones, and I will tell you if I have time later, we are doing another research, the same thing in phones, totally unique in the world, where we can follow telephone users, mobile phone users, and their news consumptions. So these are the findings. 3 consumer groups, whose needs we don't address at all. We are losing them if we are not changing. Same needs are basic needs. The differentiator here is functionality. We spend too little time on making functionality work for different segments. We think that one shoe fits all, as long as it's digital. But in this case, it is not, and it's half the audience. So one of the findings is that we could say that if you, this media, this newsroom, do this, you will serve this audience, this segment, better. So we have kind of an action list that we can work through. But this is the hard thing to swallow. Legacy news media is less relevant for half the Swedish market. And I believe it's the same everywhere. And it's not only because they distrust media, it's because we're not doing the right thing. So next step will be mobile, the mobile research. And the timeline of it is perfectly timed with the next CIRCOM conference, if you'll have me. We will do this in August and September, same layout as we did. And as you understand, there are 600 more pages that I'm not showing you, because this is a huge amount of data that we have worked through. But doing this, we realize that we're totally in the hands of Google and Facebook. So I'm going to continue the platform discussion that was opened here and talk about the new ecosystem. In fact, I think it's totally wrong to talk about platforms, because that is a neutral word, and it's totally bringing our brains in the wrong direction. And I also have a disclaimer on the Google people here. Since I work with them, I have to say they are brilliant, everything they do is creative, but I have some problems with what they're doing. I call it the monkey trap. Do you know what that is? It is actually a trap for monkeys. It is a bottle, or I don't know what you say in English for this, amphora. You put a fruit. I'm not saying it has to be an apple, but you put a fruit in the bottle, and the monkey tries to get the fruit, grabs it, and cannot get out, and sits by the bottle until you just take up the monkey. Caught. This is where we are, because there is a very, very nice things with all these opportunities with social media and the platforms, and it's our short-term operational needs that are fulfilled this way. Primarily, as you said, Nasir, reach. We are aiming at the young people, and we think this is the way. So all media outlets, especially public service media, think that this is the way to get to, as long as we get to them, they will like us, and this is the way to get to them. And I've been in enough boardrooms to know that there are a lot of board members that don't really know what that little ghost is, but we're pretty modern if we have it somewhere on our site. So it's a way for media to be contemporary. And it's fantastic. The Mojo thing, the revolution, it's fantastic. Everything we've seen here is fantastic and good for storytelling, so we want to do that. And it lowers the cost, fantastic. If you do crowdsourcing through social media for content, it is fantastic. Some of the best productions that, for instance, Swedish television, Svenska Dagbladet have done are done with social media. And we can have a dialogue. But the long-term strategic threat is really, really not discussed. So what are we talking about? What is a platform? Yesterday, when we had our Canadian colleague, he used platforms in 3 different ways. And this is a problem for television people, because for 25 years, we have been talking about platform as distribution. So we kind of use platform for how to distribute our programs or our channels, and we talk about Google and Facebook and YouTube and social media in the same way, but it's totally different beast. This is the European Union that I think surprised themselves when they made this definition of platform, and everybody agreed, not the usual case when they have a hearing. It is 2 sides of a market, and a platform is bringing them together. Sounds great. It's not distribution, it's facilitating a meeting. And it doesn't have to bring value to both sides. So that's the business model. What are we talking about? In the examples, you can see familiar brands. The type of the platform is actually the function of them. This is also from the European Union, this list. Can you see any European platform in that list? Sorry. Well, there's a Swedish one. Asia has 80 platforms, and now I'm only counting platforms that have a turnover of $9 billion. US has 63, Europe has 27. The American platforms are fantastic. 2014, Microsoft, Google, Apple, Intel, Amazon, and Yahoo, and Facebook, eBay, and Salesforce got granted 11,585 patents. New technology, innovation, R&D. At the same time, the whole country of Sweden, every sector, 516. So their rates of innovation is extreme. I'm facilitating a workshop at Swedish Television, by the way, in June, where Google is going to teach media teams their innovation process. And in one day, they go from challenge, idea, to prototype, and includes a constant dialogue with the user. And that is extremely fantastic innovation process for a company that sometimes spends years on innovation for the same thing. The American domination is total. 72%, I think you had the same figure here, of the total market value of all platforms in the world is American. Only 4% is European. The world's richest companies, of course, Apple, Alphabet, that is Google, the mother company, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. 10 years ago, only Microsoft was on that list. So in 10 years, these companies have come to dominate the world.